It was a brisk November afternoon in Chicago when Donald Trump, wearing his signature long blue-black coat and red tie, decided to stroll down Michigan Avenue after a business meeting. The city buzzed with life. The honking of taxis, the chatter of people, and the distant rumble of the L train created a symphony of city sounds. The air was crisp, and as Trump walked, he took in the sights of the bustling metropolis. He liked Chicago's energy, its unapologetic boldness. But amidst the crowd, something suddenly caught his attention, stopping him in his tracks. Near Millennium Park, a frail woman sat huddled against the side of a building. Her clothes were old and tattered, and her hands trembled as she clutched a sign that read, "Veteran in Need. Please help." Her eyes, weary and hollow, spoke of hardship and days spent battling the bitter cold. People walked past without a second glance, as if she were invisible, just another forgotten soul in a city full of dreams and despair. Trump, known for his larger-than-life persona and confident stride, felt a shift within himself. He softened as he approached her, the urgency of his business meeting fading into insignificance compared to the sight before him. He knelt down, his eyes meeting hers, and spoke with an unexpected gentleness. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice low and kind, the busy street fading into the background. The woman, startled by the sudden attention, blinked and hesitated. Her voice, when it came, was barely audible, a whisper of a once strong spirit. "It's Mary Henderson," she replied, her eyes wary yet grateful for the sudden kindness. "Mary," Trump repeated, as if committing it to memory. He looked at her for a moment longer, noticing the lines etched into her face, evidence of a life lived with more trials than triumphs. "You're a veteran?" "Yes, sir," she whispered again, her eyes dropping to the ground. "I served 12 years in the Army. Life's been tough since I got injured and lost my home." Her words hung heavy in the cold air, each one a testament to the struggles she had faced. Trump's expression, usually firm and authoritative, softened visibly. Here was a woman who had given so much for her country, now reduced to pleading for help on a street corner. It wasn't right. He knew, in that moment, that he couldn't just walk away. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his movements deliberate and filled with purpose. "Mary, help is coming," he assured her, his voice steady, conveying a promise he intended to keep. He took a step back, dialing a number with one hand while signaling to a nearby food vendor with the other. Within moments, a steaming bowl of soup and a sandwich were handed to Mary. She took the food with trembling hands, her eyes welling with tears, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. Trump stayed by her side, watching as she slowly began to eat, each bite seeming to warm her a little more against the biting cold. And as she ate, Trump stood there, already thinking of what more could be done, knowing that this was only the beginning. As Mary ate her soup, Trump stood nearby, organizing help with his assistant Margaret. His voice was low but commanding, ensuring every detail was handled promptly. Within minutes, a sleek black SUV arrived at the curb, drawing the attention of curious onlookers who whispered amongst themselves, trying to piece together the scene unfolding before them. Trump helped Mary into the car, his movements gentle yet firm, assuring her, "This is just the start. You deserve more." The SUV whisked them through the bustling streets to a nearby luxury hotel. The grand entrance, adorned with twinkling lights and a doorman in a crisp uniform, seemed worlds away from the cold street corner Mary had been on only moments before. Hotel staff, meticulously briefed by Margaret, greeted Mary with warmth, treating her as if she were an esteemed guest. They led her to a suite on one of the upper floors, a spacious room complete with fresh clothes, a warm bed, and a hot shower that awaited her. The contrast between her previous reality and the comfort surrounding her now was overwhelming. As Mary took in her new surroundings, her eyes widened, and she turned to Trump, her voice trembling. "Why are you doing this for me, Mr. Trump?" she asked, the disbelief evident in her tone. Trump looked at her, his expression sincere, the weight of her question hanging in the air. "Because you gave so much, and it's time someone gave back," he replied, his voice simple yet profound. The words hung there, an unspoken acknowledgement of the sacrifices she had made, and of the second chance she so rightly deserved. Shortly after, there was a knock on the door. Margaret had arranged for a doctor to come and assess Mary's health. The doctor, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, conducted a thorough examination, prescribing medications and recommending follow-up care. Mary sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes downcast, as the doctor took her vitals and made notes. It had been years since she had received proper medical attention, and the care she received now filled her with a mixture of gratitude and vulnerability. Margaret was working behind the scenes, too. She had contacted the Veterans Outreach Foundation, an organization specializing in aiding homeless veterans. They were swift to respond. By the time Mary had settled in, a knock echoed through the room, and Margaret ushered in Linda, a representative from the foundation. Linda, a woman in her late 40s with a warm, approachable demeanor, smiled at Mary and sat beside her on the plush sofa. "Mary," Linda began, her voice gentle, "we'll get you back on your feet. Housing, job training, whatever you need." She placed her hand reassuringly on Mary's, and for the first time in years, Mary felt a flicker of hope, a genuine belief that things could change. Trump stood by the window, watching the scene unfold, his arms crossed as he listened. Mary turned towards him, her eyes glistening with gratitude. She struggled to find the words, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." Trump uncrossed his arms, stepping forward. "No repayment necessary, Mary. Just promise me one thing. When you're back on your feet, help someone else in need. Pay it forward." His eyes softened, and Mary nodded, swallowing back the tears that threatened to spill over. Linda spoke again, outlining the steps they would take, finding temporary housing, job opportunities, and getting Mary the support she needed to start anew. It was more than Mary could have ever hoped for, and she found herself listening with an eager heart, each promise feeling like a lifeline thrown her way. As the evening turned into night, the once cold and hopeless November afternoon seemed like a distant memory. Mary sat wrapped in a plush robe provided by the hotel, sipping warm tea, her eyes occasionally drifting to the city lights glittering beyond the window. She could hardly believe how drastically her life had changed in just a few hours. And it was all because someone had stopped, listened, and cared. Trump eventually left the room, giving Mary a gentle nod as he exited. Margaret lingered for a moment, ensuring Mary had everything she needed, before following Trump out. As they walked through the hallway, Margaret spoke up, her voice filled with admiration. "You made a real difference today, sir. She's not just going to survive. She's going to thrive." Trump gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Everyone deserves a chance, Margaret. Sometimes, they just need someone to believe in them." Downstairs, the lobby was still bustling, guests moving in and out, unaware of the story that had just unfolded above them. As Trump and Margaret stepped outside into the cold night air, Trump took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the cityscape. It wasn't often that he took such a personal approach, but today had felt different. Today, he hadn't just seen the city's energy. He'd seen the people, those forgotten by society, the ones who had fallen through the cracks. And he knew that sometimes, all it took was one person to stop and say, "You matter." The following morning, Mary awoke to a new sense of purpose. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, filling the luxurious hotel room with warmth and hope. The events of the previous day felt like a dream, but the soft robe around her shoulders and the gentle knock at her door told her otherwise. Margaret had arrived early, smiling warmly as she handed Mary a cup of coffee and gave her an update on what was to come. "The Veterans Outreach team has already arranged for temporary housing," Margaret said, her voice filled with enthusiasm. "And we've got a few job interviews lined up for you later this week. Everything is going to fall into place." Mary held the warm cup between her hands, feeling the gratitude welling inside her. She looked at Margaret, her eyes filled with hope for the first time in years. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice shaky. "You don't need to thank me," Margaret replied gently. "This is all you. We're just giving you a little push to get started." Trump, who had come by to check on Mary before leaving the hotel, walked into the room at that moment. His demeanor, as always, was confident yet thoughtful. "Morning, Mary," he greeted, giving her a nod. How are you feeling today? Better, Mary responded, a smile tugging at her lips. A lot better, thanks to all of you. Trump nodded, seeming satisfied. The world's full of people who just need someone to believe in them, he said, almost as if speaking to himself. He then reached into his jacket pocket and handed Mary an envelope. This is for immediate expenses. My foundation will cover your rent for the first year while you get back on your feet. Mary took the envelope, her eyes widening as she realized what it contained. She looked up at Trump, her voice breaking. You've changed my life. How can I ever repay you? Trump smiled, a rare warmth shining through. Promise me one thing. When you're able, pay it forward. Help someone else who needs it. Mary nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I will. I promise. With that, Trump prepared to leave, giving Mary one last nod. Margaret stayed behind for a while longer, helping Mary pack her few belongings before they left for the temporary housing arranged by the Veterans Outreach Foundation. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Mary, with Linda from the outreach team by her side, attended job interviews, filled out paperwork for housing, and began attending sessions designed to help veterans reintegrate into civilian life. Linda, ever patient and understanding, became Mary's confidant. She listened as Mary shared stories of her past, the deployments, the friends she had lost, and the hardships she had endured since returning home. One day, as they sat together in a small office at the foundation, Linda looked at Mary with a smile. You're stronger than you know, she said, and soon enough, you'll be back on your feet, doing what you love. Mary smiled back, a light returning to her eyes. I think I'm starting to believe that, she admitted. Linda patted her shoulder. Good. Because we all believe in you. It wasn't long before Mary landed a job in an administrative role at a local nonprofit. The work was meaningful, and her new co-workers welcomed her with open arms. On her first day, Mary stood in front of her small desk, taking in the view of the bustling office. It was far from the streets she had grown accustomed to, far from the hopelessness that had once gripped her. Trump, true to his word, kept in contact. Margaret often called to check on Mary's progress, and Trump himself made a few surprise visits, always offering words of encouragement. During one such visit, Mary shared her excitement about her new job. I never thought I'd be here, she told him, her voice filled with emotion. I feel like I have a purpose again. Trump smiled, his eyes reflecting pride. That's what it's all about, Mary. Finding purpose. You're proving that no matter how tough things get, there's always a way back. Mary's journey wasn't without its challenges. There were days when the weight of her past felt heavy, and the thought of rebuilding seemed overwhelming. But she wasn't alone anymore. With the support of Linda, the Veterans Outreach team, and the encouragement from Trump, she faced each obstacle head-on. One chilly morning, as Mary walked to work, she paused in front of a park bench where a young man sat, shivering and clutching a thin blanket. The scene was all too familiar. She approached him, her heart aching at the sight. Hey, she said softly, kneeling down to meet his eyes. What's your name? The young man looked up, startled. It's Kevin, he replied, his voice barely audible. Mary smiled, extending her hand. Kevin, let's get you something warm to eat. I've been where you are, and I know there's a way out. She helped him to his feet, and together they walked towards a nearby diner. As they entered, Mary felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't experienced in years, a purpose beyond herself. She thought of Trump's words, his request that she pay it forward. And here she was, doing just that. Months passed, and Mary's life continued to transform. She had moved into her own apartment, small but cozy, a place she could call home. Her work at the nonprofit flourished, and she became an advocate for other veterans, sharing her story and helping others find their way. Trump, upon hearing of her success, invited Mary to a charity event organized by his foundation. Standing on stage, Mary spoke to the audience about her journey, the cold nights on the street, the hopelessness she had felt, and the kindness of a stranger that had changed everything. We all have the power to make a difference, she said, her voice steady. Sometimes, all it takes is for one person to stop and say, "You matter." That's what Mr. Trump did for me. And now, it's my mission to do the same for others. The room erupted in applause, and Trump, standing off to the side, nodded, a proud smile on his face. Mary had come full circle, from a veteran lost in the cracks of society to a beacon of hope for others like her. It was a journey of resilience, kindness, and the power of second chances. After the event, Trump approached Mary, extending his hand. "You've done well, Mary. I always knew you would." Mary shook his hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for believing in me." Trump smiled. "Just keep paying it forward. That's all the thanks I need." And with that, Mary knew her journey was just beginning, not as someone who needed help, but as someone who could now offer it. A light in the darkness for those still searching for their way. Months later, Mary organized a community event to help other homeless veterans. The event was held at a local community center, and it was abuzz with activity. Volunteers were setting up tables, arranging chairs, and preparing meals for the veterans who would attend. Mary moved through the room, offering a kind word here and a smile there, her heart full as she watched everything come together. This event was her way of giving back, of fulfilling the promise she had made to herself and to Donald Trump. Word of the event spread quickly, and when Trump heard about Mary's efforts, he decided to attend as an honored guest. As he arrived at the community center, the crowd buzzed with excitement. People pointed and whispered, amazed to see him there in support of Mary and her cause. Trump made his way to the front of the room, shaking hands and exchanging greetings with those in attendance. Mary took the stage, her hands trembling slightly as she held the microphone. She looked out at the faces of veterans, volunteers, and members of the community, and her eyes found Trump's in the crowd. He gave her an encouraging nod, and she smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. "Thank you all for being here today," Mary began, her voice strong and steady. "A few months ago, I was in a very different place. I was lost, alone, and unsure if I'd ever find my way again. But then, a stranger stopped to help me. That stranger was Donald Trump. He didn't just give me a handout. He gave me my life back." The audience erupted in applause, and Mary paused, her eyes welling with tears. She took a deep breath, then continued, "Now, it's my turn to help others. Together, we can ensure that no veteran is left behind. We can make a difference, one life at a time." Trump, visibly moved by Mary's words, stepped forward to address the crowd. He took the microphone from Mary and turned to face the audience. "Mary is proof that with the right support, anyone can rise again," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Her story reminds us that kindness is transformative. It can change lives, and it can change the world." The crowd erupted once more in applause, and Trump handed the microphone back to Mary. She smiled at him, her heart full, and then addressed the audience again. "Thank you, Mr. Trump, for believing in me. And thank you to all of you for being here today. Let's work together to make sure every veteran knows they matter." The event was a resounding success, raising thousands of dollars for homeless veterans. The funds would go towards providing temporary housing, job training, and essential resources for those in need. But more than the money raised, it was the sense of community that made the event truly special. People from all walks of life had come together to support a cause that mattered, and the energy in the room was palpable. A collective hope that things could, and would, get better. After the speeches, Mary spent time talking to the veterans who had come to the event. She listened to their stories, offered words of encouragement, and shared her own experiences. Many of them saw themselves in Mary. They, too, had faced the struggles of life after service, the challenges of finding stability and purpose. And seeing Mary standing before them, a beacon of hope, gave them a renewed sense of possibility. Trump stayed for much of the event, mingling with attendees and offering his support. He spoke with veterans, thanking them for their service, and he listened to their stories with genuine interest. It was clear that his involvement went beyond a simple gesture. He truly cared about the people he was helping, and his presence made a lasting impact on everyone there. As the event drew to a close, Mary found herself standing beside Trump once again. She looked at him, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done," she said. Trump smiled, his gaze steady. "You don't need to thank me, Mary. You've done the work. You've turned your life around, and now you're helping others do the same. That's all the thanks I need." Mary nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. I just hope I can make as much of a difference as you have. You already are, Trump replied. And you'll keep doing it. Just keep paying it forward. As Trump left the community center, Mary watched him go, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. She had come so far from where she had been just months before. She had gone from being homeless and hopeless to standing before a crowd, sharing her story and inspiring others. And she knew this was just the beginning. Mary turned back to the community center, her eyes scanning the room filled with people who had come together for a common cause. She saw veterans smiling, volunteers chatting, and children playing in the corner. It was a scene of hope, of unity, and of the power of community. This is what it's all about, Mary thought to herself. Helping each other, lifting each other up, and making sure no one is left behind. And with that thought, she knew her mission was clear. She would continue to fight for those who needed it, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to make sure that every veteran knew they mattered. As the event came to an end, Mary took a moment to reflect on how far she had come. She thought of the cold nights on the street, the moments of despair, and the kindness of a stranger that had changed everything. And she knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them with courage, with hope, and with the knowledge that she was never alone. To all those watching and listening, Mary left them with a question. What will you do to make a difference? Who can you help today? It was a call to action, a reminder that everyone has the power to change a life. Sometimes, all it takes is stopping for a moment, offering a hand, and saying, "You matter." As she walked away from the stage, Mary felt a quiet sense of peace. She was no longer the one in need. She was the one making a difference. And that, she realized, was the greatest gift of all. As the story comes full circle, Mary's life is a testament to resilience and the power of compassion. From the depths of despair to becoming a beacon of hope, her journey reminds us all of the impact one act of kindness can have. Donald Trump's decision to stop that day wasn't just a momentary gesture. It was the spark that reignited Mary's life and inspired countless others to step up for those in need. Mary's transformation from a struggling veteran to an advocate for others highlights the incredible power of community and support. It wasn't just about receiving help. It was about regaining her dignity, finding her purpose, and then using her experience to lift others up. The event she organized, the veterans she connected with, and the stories she shared all speak to the lasting change that can happen when we choose to care. To our viewers, we ask, what would you have done in Trump's place? Would you have stopped to help someone in need? Sometimes, it's the simplest actions that have the most profound impact. We'd love to hear your thoughts and personal stories. Please share them in the comments below or email us. Let's inspire each other to spread compassion and hope. Thank you for watching this heartwarming story. If it touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales. Together, we can create a ripple effect of kindness. Let's keep spreading hope and helping those who need it most. Have a blessed day, and remember, every small act of kindness counts.